take him. We need a Jedi of our own, one who will be here always. This must not go on. Ki-Adi-Mundi's father giving him over to Anya Kuro for Jedi training. Ki-Adi-Mundi, a Cherian male, was born in 93 BBI on Seria. He was one of several children in the Mundi family, but was the only boy among his siblings and one of the few males in his home village, as the birth rate for male Serians to females was 1 to 20. Among his siblings was an older sister, Dro. His father was a farmer, and for the first 4 years of his life, Mundi lived on the family farm, where his father and mother were content to raise him in a secluded lifestyle typical of Serians, who largely shunned technology and lived in isolation from the rest of the galaxy. As a youth, Mundi was drawn to off-worlder technology, but his father warned him embracing it would come at too high a price, something that Mundi did not understand as a young child. Throughout his early childhood, Mundi demonstrated great skill with the Force and was able to levitate items and sense danger, although his abilities were unstable due to lack of proper training. On at least one occasion, an item Mundi lifted with the Force exploded in mid-air due to this instability. Mundi's home village was periodically attacked and pillaged by a gang of raiders led by Bingarda Zon. During these raids, Zon repeatedly broke into the Mundi household, smashed their belongings, and demanded financial tributes from them, which the family always paid to avoid problems. Mundi could sense Zon's approach prior to these attacks, and his family would hide Mundi in concealed floor compartment before Zon arrived, because the raiders would kidnap male children due to the species' low birth rate. Despite the family's seclusion, rumors of Mundi's abilities with the Force began to spread even outside of Syria. When Mundi was 4 years old, a Jedi Knight named Anya Kuro, better known simply as the Dark Woman, traveled to Syria after hearing stories about the child. Although most Jedi are trained starting from infancy, she nevertheless hoped to take Mundi to Coruscant, the capital of the Galactic Republic, where the Jedi Order could test him and assign him a master to train him in the ways of the Force. When Kuro arrived in her starship, which Mundi called the Metal Beast, Mundi's siblings fled at the sight of the unfamiliar technology, but Mundi stood his ground and insisted he was not afraid. When Kuro descended from the craft, Mundi immediately sensed she had come for him, even before she identified herself. Jedi training. Some Jedi expressed concern that, having missed 4 critical years of instruction, Mundi was too old to begin his training and that his childhood on Seria would impair his judgment. Nevertheless, the Jedi Council agreed to let Mundi be trained, making him one of a very few Jedi, along with Jedi Knights Eth Koth and Anakin Skywalker, to be accepted at such a late age prior to the new Jedi Order, and he became relatively well known as a result of this distinction. Kuro would have liked to have taken Mundi as a Padawan herself, and sensed he had the potential to be her greatest apprentice, but the Council only entrusted her with more challenging students. Instead, Jedi Master Yoda was assigned to train Mundi. Nevertheless, Mundi often referred to Kuro as first teacher and remained immensely grateful to her for the rest of his life. While many regarded Kuro with suspicion for her unorthodox and aggressive Jedi training techniques, Mundi regularly defended her and her methods and refused to refer to her by the name Dark Woman as others called her. For the next 21 years, Mundi learned the ways of the Force under Yoda's tutelage. Mundi traveled to many different planets as part of his Jedi training and eventually built his own lightsaber, which had a green blade. As Mundi got older, his ability with the Force proved strong, and his ability with the lightsaber exceptional. He had no difficulty deflecting shots from multiple remotes during training sessions. However, Mundi also showed occasional signs of arrogance and willfulness during his training, which Yoda sought to counter by teaching him humility. During one session, when Mundi fought off remotes, Yoda warned him to watch his blind spot, and when Mundi insisted he had no blind spot, Yoda tripped him with his Geimer stick. Like most Jedi, Mundi also occasionally experienced difficulty with both his force power and lightsaber training, but Yoda provided him reassurance on those occasions. Throughout his training, Mundi had always made clear his intention to one day return to Syria and free his family from the persecution of the criminal raiders there. Although Yoda did not sense anger or fear in his Padawan, he was concerned Mundi's motivations were based on a desire for vengeance, which could often lead to the dark side of the Force. Mundi insisted this was not the case, and that he was driven by the desire for justice, not revenge. Nevertheless, Mundi admitted he hated Bin Ghadazon for what he had done to his family, and Yoda urged him to avoid feelings of hatred and to instead pity Zon, who Yoda said had already lost his own personal battle with the dark side. The Jedi Master also encouraged Mundi to seek out and cherish the nobility in the hearts of other living beings, and taught him the future was constantly in motion, and that the truth of any given situation is not always clear until more time passes. Mundi was the last Jedi directly trained by Yoda before he retired from direct Padawan Master training and became a staff instructor, teaching Jedi initiates at the Jedi Temple. Return to Syria. After passing his Jedi trials, Mundi was named the Jedi Watchman of the sector that included his home planet of Syria, just as many Jedi returned to the service of their birth planets. Mundi returned to Syria at age 25 with the intention of following through on his promise to protect his family from the raider gang, although Yoda again warned him not to become consumed with revenge or anger. Upon arriving home, Mundi was greeted with love and excitement from his family, who he entertained with tales of his Jedi training and experiences on other worlds. Later, his father informed him the village was still persecuted by the raiders, although Zon himself no longer participated in the raids. Although the raider base was rumored to be very dangerous, Mundi insisted he did not require any additional assistance from the villagers and would confront Zon and his men himself. Mundi rode an Arix at night to Zon's camp in the hills outside the village, where he disguised himself as a drifter until reaching the inside of the camp. Upon arriving, Mundi revealed his identity and announced his intention to challenge Zon, hoping eliminating the leader would disorganize the rest of the gang and allow the local authorities to deal with the remnants. Mundi overconfidently boasted he could beat the man with both hands tied behind his back. Mundi was taken to the gang's new leader, who had previously defeated Bin Ghadazon in combat to take control of the raiders. Treating Mundi's boast literally, she ordered her guards to tie his hands behind his back, then engaged Mundi in combat with her spear. Taken aback by how quickly his plan fell apart, and not yet strong enough in the Force to win under such circumstances, Mundi was quickly defeated and rendered unconscious. Mundi later awakened, tied to a wooden post inside a tent, where an older and weaker Zon threatened him with a vibro knife. Zon intended to slit Mundi's throat, then use that accomplishment to attempt to regain power. However, Mundi used the Force to loosen the ropes binding his wrists, then subdued both Zon and the guards who responded to the commotion. Upon exiting the tent, he was confronted by the raider chief, who this time said she would battle him to the death. Mundi offered her the chance to surrender, but she instead attacked. More cautious this time, and no longer restrained, Mundi easily disarmed her and won the fight, although he did not kill her. Surrounded by dozens of her fellow raiders, Mundi knew he could not defeat them all based on sheer numbers, so he feigned bravado and ordered them all to disband and stop pillaging the villages, or else they would have to face him. This threat largely worked, and the gang began to dissipate except for Zon, who hurled a vibro blade at Mundi with the hopes of winning his command back. Mundi used the Force to easily push the blade aside, but left Zon alive, recognizing that leaving the former chief powerless and inconsequential was a fate worse than death for Zon. The victorious Mundi then returned to his family. Early Jedi Council service. Ki-Adi-Mundi was held in high regard by members of the Jedi High Council, and he was occasionally asked to sit in on High Council meetings and participate in their decisions in the absence of Jedi Master Ki-Adi-Mundi. Yoda, already very familiar with Mundi from his training, held the Serian in high regard, and Jedi Master Mace Windu believed he demonstrated excellent judgment and courage. Mundi sat temporarily on the Jedi Council in 44 BBY, a time of particularly high tension and increased security due to a failed assassination attempt against Yoda within the Jedi Temple. Also during this time, Obi-Wan Kenobi, then 13 years old, briefly left the Jedi Order and tutelage of Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn to assist with the Melida-Dan civil war. Mundi was present at the meeting when Kenobi appeared before the Jedi Council to apologize for his brief departure, requesting to return to the Order. Like the other Council members, Mundi expressed reluctance and disappointment with Kenobi and said he did not believe Kenobi recognized that he had violated the trust not only of Jinn, but of the entire Council. Also in 44 BBY, Mundi was present when Shar Kun, a Keldor Padawan and niece of Jedi Master Plo Koon, appeared before the Jedi High Council at the behest of her Ithorian Jedi Master Soldith during the Stark Hyperspace War. Shar Kun explained that her uncle had communicated with her via telepathy and asked her to approach the Council so they could speak to Plo Koon through her. When Soldith vouched for Shar Kun's credibility, the Council agreed to join their minds with her, which led them to dispatch a Jedi strike force to Troikan to assist with Plo Koon's mission there. Following the death of Jiet during the Yinchori uprising in 33 BBY, the Jedi Council was forced to consider a permanent replacement for Jiet. Although some considered Jin for this vacancy, Windu advised against it because of Jin's headstrong and iconoclastic personality, and instead strongly supported Mundi for the position. Yoda did not object to Mundi's selection, but did not immediately voice support for it either, as he was distracted by his concerns over who was responsible for causing the Yinchori uprising. The possibility of Mundi joining the Jedi Council was expressed to him during this time, but before formally accepting the invitation, Mundi returned to Syria and his duties as a Jedi watchman so he could consider the matter. Conflict on Syria. Despite his allegiance to the Jedi Order, Mundi actively lobbied for Syria to reject proposals to join the Republic, in doing so, encouraging his species to maintain their neutrality. In 33 BBY, Silaish, a Twi'lek representative, encouraged the Council of Elders to join the Republic and called Syria a backward world due to its lack of technology. In response to these remarks, Mundi spoke passionately in defense of the planet, calling Syria's lack of technology as a virtue rather than a detriment. He argued giving greater power to off-worlder influences would make the planet as unpleasant and corrupt as the outsider Citadel cities. The elders were so moved by Mundi's speech that they rejected Silai's request without even taking the matter to a vote, which prompted the Twi'lek to view Mundi as an enemy. Shortly after this speech, a distraught Mawin informed Mundi that Sylvan had run away with Maj Odo Nomor, and Mundi promised to find her and bring her home. He found both Sylvan and Nomor at a pro-tech movement rally where Republic diplomat Bronn was encouraging an agitated crowd of young Syrians to reject their elders' advice and embrace off-worlder technology. Emboldened by his earlier speech before the Council of Elders, Mundi attempted to sway the crowd against Bronn's way of thinking, but succeeded only in antagonizing them further. Too late, Mundi realized Bronn tricked him into addressing the crowd because Bronn knew it would anger them and make Bronn himself appear accepting of outsider opinions. Incensed by Mundi's words, No More encouraged the crowd to physically remove Mundi from the rally. They picked him up and began carrying him, but Mundi resisted fighting back because he felt they were only children and presented no real danger. Distracted while calling out for his daughter, No More grabbed Mundi's lightsaber, now a purple-bladed weapon, but accidentally activated it and killed a Serian bystander. No More and Sylvan fled, and the confused crowd mistakenly believed Mundi killed the bystander himself, much to Bron's delight. Although the crowd called on Mundi to be charged with murder, surveillance footage and an examination on the skin cells on Mundi's lightsaber proved that No More was responsible for the death. Nevertheless, Bron used the incident to spread rumors and create a sense of mistrust about Mundi and the Council of Elders. The Elders allowed Mundi to go free and bring No More and his accomplices to justice, which they indicated included Sylvan. They did not return Mundi's lightsaber, however, because they claimed it was required for evidence. Mundi immediately returned home, where he found 4 members of the Techrats gang, Skeel, Cordron, Twin, and Sylvan herself, had broken into his house and stolen his groceries. Mundi suspected they had stolen the food because they were harboring No More, and he traveled via Arix to the outsider citadel to find him. There he sought his source Yid, but learned he had gone into hiding and was missing for the last 2 days. Yid's wife told Mundi he was afraid for his life after overhearing the smuggler Effant Mon speaking to somebody else about a shipment. Believing the shipment to be related to the swoops, Mundi found Yid in a nearby cantina, but Yid refused to talk to him despite offers of money and stormed off. Due to the rumors Bron had spread about Mundi, most of the outsider Citadel citizens distrusted Mundi. A group of alien outsiders, led by a Deveronian who previously lost half of his left horn in a fight with Mundi, attacked the Serian, overconfident because he lacked a lightsaber. Mundi easily fended them off with hand-to-hand combat, but when the attackers continued to heavily outnumber him, he summoned his Arix, who rushed into the fray and helped Mundi defeat them. Citadel security forces arrived after the scene ended, which meant Mundi had to face another inquiry before the Elders the next day. Not far away, Mundi discovered the dead body of Yid, who had been shot to death at close range by what a Mundi determined was likely a skilled assassin. The guilt-stricken Jedi blamed himself for Ida's death. During the inquiry the next day, Elder Narsomo Dali, a friend of Mundi, insisted the search for No More was growing out of control and considered relieving Mundi of the duty due to his personal involvement because of his daughter. Dali refused to return Mundi's lightsaber and explained the council was proceeding with caution because some members of the public saw the pursuit of No More as prosecution for his pro-tech beliefs. But Mundi said the council should instead be focused on doing the right thing. After using a Jedi mind trick on a Grand Prisoner with knowledge of Effant Mon's activities, Mundi learned where the smuggler was hiding No More, but they were gone before Mundi arrived. He discovered a sketch of an angry face that Sylvan used to draw when she was young, and felt despair over never recognizing how troubled she was. Distracted, he nearly failed to detect an attack by Flitch R1, a huge mercenary droid left behind by Mon, to attack the Jedi. In his haste to depart, however, Mon failed to calibrate the droid's target system, so Mundi was able to dodge its attacks and escape. As he was fleeing, Mundi ran into a Serian messenger sent by Narsomo Dali. The Jedi directed the messenger into the sewers with him and drew Flitch R1's fire away from the boy, but was struck and injured by one of the droid's blasts and nearly crushed by falling debris. The messenger ran to assist him and delivered Dali's message by returning Mundi's lightsaber and explaining that Dali had taken to heart Mundi's earlier statement about doing the right thing. The now armed Mundi disabled the approaching Fletch R1 with one swoop of his lightsaber, then collapsed. The messenger took the unconscious Mundi back to Dali, who placed Mundi into a Bacta tank to treat his injuries. Upon learning that Mon had fled the planet with Noma and Sylvan, Dali obtained permission from the Jedi Council to extend Mundi's jurisdiction, freeing the Jedi to pursue no more anywhere in the galaxy. These efforts furthered Bron's arguments that the Serian search for No More was personal and unjust, as many Serians felt the pursuit should be dropped now that he was off the planet. Jedi Council Member. Mission to Azmeru. Ki-Adi-Mundi joined the Jedi High Council just as the Nebula Front terrorist organization made an unsuccessful assassination attempt against Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum. Mundi was present during a council discussion with Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn about the matter, where Jinn said he did not believe Valorum was really the Nebula Front's intended target, and that he felt the organization had more duplicitous motives. Mundi was one of 7 Jedi, along with Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Saisi Tiin, Yaddle, Vergere, and Depa Billaba, selected to investigate the attempted assassination and apprehend leaders of the Nebula Front. Following a lead, the Jedi traveled to the planet Azmeru aboard the consular-class cruiser Prominence, accompanied by another cruiser, Ecliptic. Mundi watched from a starboard viewpoint as the Prominence navigated the minefield around the planet and listened into the Nebula Front, contacting the ship and asking them to leave one of their vessels in orbit around the planet as a sign of good faith while the other one landed. Mundi, like the other Jedi, did not feel comfortable with the proposal, but they ultimately agreed to it. As the Prominence approached the planet, they were attacked by Nebula Front Tikia starfighters and the Dreadnought-class heavy cruiser Famulus, which destroyed Ecliptic and forced Prominence to crash into a lake on the planet's surface. Mundi, the other 6 Jedi, and a few surviving members of the judicial forces escaped from the ship and swam to a nearby island. The diminutive Yaddle rode on Mundi's shoulders to safety. The survivors traveled to a high vantage point among the boulders where they watched vehicles searching for them, and when a human from the Nebula Front approached and asked to speak peacefully to them, Mundi revealed himself to him along with Jinn and Tin. The man said they felt the Republic was allying itself with their enemy, the Trade Federation, by hosting the upcoming Eriadu Trade Summit. While the Nebula Front said they would not attack the Jedi and other survivors, they intended to leave them stranded on Azmeru and effectively hold them hostage unless the Republic cancelled the summit. By nightfall, Mundi took turns at guard duty along with Jinn, Kenobi, Depa, and Saisi. The next day, when the Jedi heard someone approaching, Jinn and Mundi investigated and captured an Osan, one of the enslaved natives of the planet. The Osan offered to help the stranded survivors escape the planet and led Mundi and the others through underground tunnels to a nearby city, where they planned to commandeer a ship and escape. As they arrived, however, they were attacked by members of the Nebula Front. Mundi, Jinn, and Kenobi stood back to back and deflected blaster bolts with their lightsabers as they worked their way into a plaza, trying to reach the nearby cloak-shaped fighters before any of the terrorists could get to them. They were attacked by a gunship, however, which forced Jinn and Kenobi to take cover as Mundi wildly parried the vehicle's shots. The 3 Jedi were forced to pull back, but eventually they made their way forward again, along with Teen. As the 4 Jedi spread into a wedge formation and deflected shots with their lightsabers, a group of Osan slaves revolted against the Nebula Front just as Lancet starfighter reinforcements from Eriadu arrived to help the Jedi. The tide of the battle was quickly turned, and the Nebula Front militants surrendered. Eriadu Trade Summit. Mundi returned to Coruscant after the Azmeru incident to await the Eriadu Trade Summit. During this time, Mundi received a transmission from Jinn and Kenobi that they were pursuing Nebula Front official Arwen Cole to the Eriadu, and Mundi delivered that message to the others on the Jedi High Council. When the date of the summit arrived, Mundi traveled to Eriadu along with other fellow Jedi to provide protection. Mundi and Teen patrolled the seats of Seswenna Hall, where the summit was held, searching for any disturbances in the Force. The two Jedi learned that Cole's freighter had been spotted at a nearby customs warehouse, where several custom agents were attacked and tied up by armed assailants. Mundi and the other Jedi traveled to the warehouse, where they split up on airspeeders to search for the assailants. Mundi, riding along with Vergere, helped locate the Nebula Front militants, who opened fire on the airspeeders with missile launchers from the rooftop of a building. Mundi and the Jedi engaged the attackers along with help from Judicial Forces members. They eventually captured 6 terrorists, including a Gotal wearing a mimetic suit that Mundi and Vergere subdued, but found neither Cole or the Nebula Front leader Havak among them. Interrogating the captured assailants, the Jedi quickly realized the entire encounter was a distraction to keep the Jedi occupied, while the Nebula Front advanced their secret plans back at the Eriadu Trade Summit. The Jedi returned to Seswenna Hall, where later Kenobi and Jin shared with Mundi and the other Jedi information they had obtained from Cole that Havak planned to use a droid from the Trade Federation Directorate to assassinate Chancellor Valorum. Kenobi suggested ordering all droids removed from the delegation, but Mundi said that could prompt the Nebula Front to trigger the droids into opening fire. Mundi suggested getting someone aboard the Trade Federation freighter to shut down the central control computer, thus disabling the droids, but there was no time. Mundi, Teen, and Kenobi took positions in front of the Trade Federation rostrum with their lightsabers ready to deflect fire from the droids. However, when the Trade Federation Directorate activated their force fields, thus ensuring no blaster shots could enter or leave their shielded area, their droids suddenly turned on them and opened fire, killing all present Directorate members as Mundi and the other Jedi looked on helplessly. They later learned it was the Trade Federation Directorate, not Valorum, who had been Havok's target all along. Later, also in 33 BBY, Mundi attended a Jedi High Council meeting during which Jin and Kenobi were informed Jedi Master Adigalia had gone missing during a covert mission to the planet Essels. The Council had obtained a data card informing them the research facilities on Essels had progressed to the full-scale manufacturing, and that a factory owned by Trincata Starships was building 50 experimental Vulture droid starfighters equipped with hyperdrives. Concerned about this potential threat, the Council had dispatched Gallia to investigate. After losing contact with her, the Council assigned Jin, along with Vel Ardox and Noro Zak, to travel to Esseles and find Gallia. The Council ordered Jin to leave Kenobi behind, but Jin brought his Padawan along with him anyway. Prior to the mission to Obridan, Kenobi and Mundi had a lightsaber duel in the Jedi Temple. Kenobi was victorious in the duel. Re-emergence of the Sith. In 32 BBI, Mundi was still working toward the rank of Jedi Master when he and the rest of the Jedi High Council were approached by Qui-Gon Jinn, who had recently escaped the Trade Federation's blockade of the planet Naboo. Jin told the Council of a lightsaber duel he had with a Zabrak warrior who was well-trained in the dark side of the Force. Jin believed the attacker was a Sith Lord, a claim that the Council met with incredulity. Mundi, in particular, insisted it was impossible as the Sith had been believed extinct for a millennium. Mace Windu agreed with Mundi, but the Council agreed to further investigate the attacker's identity. Jin also presented the Council with a 9-year-old human boy named Anakin Skywalker, who he had discovered during his recent stay on Tatooine. The child had a very high midi-chlorian count, and Jin believed him to be the chosen one, identified in a prophecy as the one who would restore balance to the Force. Mundi and the other Jedi were skeptical but agreed to see the boy. Upon meeting Skywalker, Mundi sensed a danger in the child that he could not fully explain and felt leery not of the boy himself, but of what he could become in the future. The Sarian came to believe the disturbance he felt in the Force during his previous trip to Tatooine was somehow connected to Skywalker's presence on the planet. Mundi was so amazed by Skywalker's strength with the Force that the Sarian questioned the reliability of his perceptive abilities for failing to have located the boy on Tatooine when visited the planet himself, which he considered a personal failure. It was initially decided, however, that Skywalker was too old to begin Jedi training. Mundi agreed with this ruling and felt he should be empathetic toward him, since he believed the situation is not so different from his own, since he himself had also been trained at a later age. Nevertheless, he had his concerns regarding Skywalker's training. Later, Jin's suspicions about the Sith were proven correct when the Zabrak warrior, later identified as Darth Maul, killed him in a lightsaber duel during the Battle of Naboo. Mundi grew extremely troubled by his failure and the failure of the Council to recognize that the Sith had indeed returned, as Jin foresaw. He had trouble finding peace in the months that followed, even during meditation. Under the circumstances, Mundi and the rest of the Council agreed that Skywalker would be trained as a Jedi, but Mundi secretly harbored feelings of discomfort about the boy and intended to be more watchful of him than of other Padawans. The Sarian traveled to Naboo to attend Jin's Jedi funeral and was also present the next day at the Theed Royal Palace for the celebration of Naboo's liberation from the Trade Federation. Upon the realization that the Sith had indeed resurfaced, Mundi and the other members of the Jedi began feeling major disturbances in the Force. Seeking Sharad Het. By 32 BBY, Mundi formally obtained the title of Jedi Master, although he modestly continued to refer to himself as a Jedi Knight in the weeks immediately following this promotion. Following an attack on Mocho Steep, a Jawa trading site on Tatooine, the Jedi Council received word about a series of increasingly violent attacks by Tusken raiders on that planet. Yoda and Eth Koth spoke privately to Mundi about the matter in the Jedi Temple and revealed they believed one of the Tusken leaders was Sharad Het, a famous Jedi Knight who had gone missing 15 years earlier. Mundi knew Het by reputation, but had falsely believed him to be dead. In light of the recent re-emergence of the Sith, Yoda feared that if Het was still alive, or whether he had succumbed to the dark side of the Force, which they felt could make him vulnerable to being recruited by the Sith. Yoda asked Mundi to seek Het, because they believed he was the only Jedi powerful enough to fight him who did not know him personally. Thus Mundi would harbor no reservations if Het had to be fought or killed. When Mundi accepted, Yoda explained he would first have to seek an audience with Jabba the Silijik Tiure to request safe passage through the desert without Jabba's forces interfering with the mission. Mundi expressed disgust with the concept of meeting the Hutt, still angry over Jabba's previous abduction of his daughter Sylvan, but he agreed to do so and departed for Tatooine. Due to the secretive nature of Mundi's assignment, he was to depart from Coruscant in a consular-class cruiser via a nondescript building rooftop rather than a spaceport. As he awaited the cruiser, Mundi was visited by Anya Kuro, who he had not seen for several years after she went into a self-imposed exile for allowing the Jedi trainee Aura Singh to be kidnapped and lost as a child. Mundi comforted Kuro and assured her Singh's fate was not her fault. He could not tell Kuro details about his upcoming mission, but as his ship arrived, Kuro warned him she had dreamt of a great darkness awaiting him on the planet he was visiting and urged him to beware of the dark side of the Force. Mundi traveled to Tatooine and landed at one of the Mos Eisley spaceport docking bays owned by Ohun and Chachi Damal, which, although run down and cheap, provided Mundi's mission with further cover and was the closest available port to Jabba's Desiligic complex. Unbeknownst to him, Mundi's movements were being tracked by Singh, now a bounty hunter who had been hired by the Hutt crime lord Gardula Basadi the Elder to find and kill Het. Upon arriving at Jabba's complex, the Hutt explained he would normally seek revenge for Mundi having stolen Sylvan, who he considered his slave and property, but Jabba feigned ignorance over the identity of Sylvan's rescuer, so he would not have to attack Mundi. With little patience for Jabba's antics, Mundi repeatedly insulted the Hutt and insisted he would one day pay for his crimes, but for now demanded free passage to the Needles, where the Tuskens had established camp. Jabba claimed to admire Mundi and granted this request, offering him a Bantha II cargo skiff, along with his henchman Hunta and 5 other guards to accompany Mundi on the trip. The Jedi suspected it was a trap, but nevertheless accepted. His suspicions proved true when the skiff was piloted into a dangerous sandstorm and the guards attacked the Sarian. Mundi tried to persuade them to surrender, but when they instead attack, the Jedi easily killed them all with his lightsaber and force skills. However, the skiff crashed and flipped over, leaving Mundi with a broken arm and forcing him to travel the rest of the trip on foot. While climbing the mountain foothills at the Needles, Mundi was attacked by womp rats and, while fending them off, fell into a crate dragon lair. As Mundi attempted to fend off the creature, he was watched from above by a band of Tusken raiders, including Sharad Het and his son and Jedi learner, a Sharad Het. Sharad was originally suspicious of Mundi's motives for seeking him, but when he learned he had been sent by Sharad's former teacher, Eth Koth, he and the Tuskens jumped down into the lair to help Mundi and slew the krayt dragon. Afterward, Het explained to Mundi that Jabba had recently flooded the Tatooine black market with a surplus of outdated weapons he had received, then provoked farmers and off-worlders into a conflict with the Tusken raiders to drive up the demand for those weapons. Around 100 Tusken raiders were killed as a result, and the recent barrage of brutal attacks by the Tuskens were conducted in an attempt to repel those attacks. Mundi condemned Het's justifications, claiming the Jedi should use their power to defend and protect others rather than attack. Nevertheless, Mundi detected that Het remained with the light side of the Force and asked him to return to the Jedi Order to help combat the rising threat of the Sith. Het refused to abandon his fellow Tuskens. However, as they were speaking, the tribe was attacked by dozens of skiffs and speeder bikes commanded by Gardula, who hoped wiping out the Tuskens would end her rival Jabba's weapon profits and improve her own stature. Mundi, Sharad, and Asharad attempted to reach the rest of the Tusken tribe before they charged, but were too far away, and they attacked Gardula's forces. As the Tuskens were getting bombarded by Gardula's explosives, Mundi and Asharad took to higher grounds as Sharad rallied his warriors and helped organize their attack. From afar, Aura Singh used a sniper rifle to kill the Bantha Mundi, and Asharad were riding, thus slowing their ability to assist with the battle. Singh engaged Sharad in a lightsaber duel, and before Mundi and Asharad could arrive to help him, she stabbed Sharad through the heart. Mundi recognized Singh as Kuro's former student, and he was disturbed not only with her abilities with the Force, but also by the fact that she had killed multiple Jedi in the past, which was evident from her collection of stolen lightsabers. Mundi tried to persuade her to turn away from the dark side of the Force, but she nevertheless attempted to finish off Sharad with her lightsaber. When Asharad stopped her and nearly killed her himself, Mundi implored him not to do so for fear of succumbing to the dark side himself. Asharad hesitated long enough for Singh to escape. With the majority of their Tusken tribe wiped out from the battle, Asharad announced his intention to return with Mundi to Coruscant to further learn the ways of the Force. With his dying breaths, Sharad asked Mundi to take Asharad as his Padawan and continue his Jedi instruction, a request the Syrian accepted. After Sharad died, Mundi and Asharad departed Tatooine for Coruscant. Upon his return, Mundi presented a report to the Jedi High Council and announced he had taken Asharad. Due to Sharad Hett's wide recognition among the Jedi, Mundi also issued a recording to the entire Jedi Order about Hett's death, explaining that he had stayed true to the light side of the Force right up to the end. Asharad, who had never before left Tatooine, had difficult adjusting to life on Coruscant and the other worlds of the galaxy, but Mundi was able to empathize because of his feelings for Seria and helped Asharad with the transition. Mundi allowed Hett to receive some training from Anya Kuro, who sparred with the young Padawan and trained him in her unconventionally violent and brutal method. Some, such as Jedi Masters, including Mace Windu and even Piel, found her approach unorthodox and disturbing, but Mundi defended her and insisted she be allowed to continue. Throughout Hett's training, Mundi could never convince the Padawan to remove his Tusken Raider mask. Emissary to Malastare. Later in 32 BBY, Mundi attended a meeting where the Jedi High Council described the long-standing conflict between the government of the planet Lanik and the Red Iaro terrorist organization, which appeared to be drawing to a stalemate. When the Red Iaro sought peace negotiations on the Grand-dominated planet Malastare, they asked for 6 Jedi to attend and ask as arbiters for the negotiations. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine requested that all 6 come from the Jedi High Council, given the importance of maintaining peace with both sides of the conflict. Mundi agreed with this logic, was among the first Jedi to volunteer, along with Mace Windu, Even Piel, Adi Gallia, Plo Koon, and Yaddle. The group, along with Asharad Hett, traveled to Malastare within a matter of days, where they were greeted by Grand Senators Ainley Team and Baskil Yzrim. The Jedi were suspicious of their Grand Hosts, who they sensed that ulterior motives for hosting the negotiations. While the rest of the group were escorted to their quarters by Team and Yzrim, Mundi lagged behind to offer words of comfort to Hett, who continued to feel uncomfortable on worlds other than Tatooine. Once the two caught up with the others, they found Piel and Gallia being fired upon by a Red Iaro Lanik and a hooded member of the theocratic sect Order of the Phoebe. Mundi and Hett drew their lightsabers and ordered them to surrender, but the 2 attackers fled. The Jedi gave chase, and Mundi questioned 2 nearby Grand Guards as to their whereabouts, but much to the Syrians' frustration, the Grands claimed not to have seen anybody pass by, and the duo escaped. Mundi noted that for them to sneak blasters onto the spaceport, the attackers must have been either very cautious or they received assistance in getting past security. The Jedi sensed growing danger on Malastare, but nevertheless continued with their mission, although Mundi ordered Asharad to remain alert. The emissaries were next taken to Governor Guddim Weepshun's palace, where the negotiations were to take place involving Grand Senators W. Pshun and Axmo, Lanik Prince Ricardo Sufli IX, and Red Iaro leader Maikchur Phoenix Zug. The Jedi attempted to guide the peace negotiations, but the talks failed to lead to any significant progress, with both sides becoming combative and refusing to consider demands from the other. Matters were further complicated by the fact that both Sufli and Zug treated the Jedi disrespectfully and felt their presence was not required. After Windu called a recess in the talks for a day to allow all parties to calm down, Sufli's military advisor, Hutar Zash, offered to give the Jedi a ride onto their quarters on their 2 easy-ride passenger airspeeders. Mundi, Asharad, Yaddle, and Koon rode on an airspeeder with 2 Lannic escorts, while Windu, Piel, and Gallia rode in a second with Zash and another Lannic. However, it turned out to be an ambush. The Lannics wore thermite bombs around their torsos with the hopes that sacrificing themselves to kill the Jedi would help Red Yaro's cause. Piel thwarted the attack on his airspeeder by literally cutting the vehicle in half with his lightsaber, causing the 3 Jedi occupants to fall into the path of Padrasas participating in the Phoebos Memorial Run. The Lannic on Mundi's airspeeder was so distracted by this development that the Jedi was able to push them both out of the vehicle. Yaddle and Het then took the speeder's controls, while Mundi directed them down into the pod racing event and helped them catch and rescue Windu, Piel, and Gala. The Jedi realized the Red Yaro terrorists who attacked them had been wearing uniforms from the House of Lannic, and that they had meant for the attack to have been ordered by Sufli, thus ensuring his rule would be brought to an end and the Red Yaro would assume his power. This led the Jedi to conclude that once the attack against them failed, the Red Yaro would try to assassinate Sufli himself. They sped to Sufli's chamber, where Mundi was the first to crash through a ceiling window with his lightsaber drawn to defend the Lannic prince. The Jedi arrived just as Zug and his men were preparing to feed Sufli to a pair of AKK dogs, non-sentient predators native to Harun Kal. The Jedi successfully defeated Zug and his men, during which time Mundi provided instruction to Het, warning him not to underestimate the enemies nor to boast upon defeating them. Although Sufli was saved, the peace negotiations were called off in light of the recent developments, and Mundi and his fellow Jedi returned to Coruscant. Hunt for Aura Singh. Over the next 2 years, the mutual respect between Mundi and Het continued to grow, and Mundi not only taught the Padawan everything he knew, but felt he was learning from Het as well. However, the Tsarian began to sense that Het's instruction would need to continue elsewhere, and that Mundi would soon have to pass him along to another Jedi Master. In 30 BBI, Mundi and the rest of the Jedi High Council received reports that the Jedi Jamikal and Pierce, as well as a squad of Republic peace officers, were slain by Aura Singh within the walls of the Jedi Temple. Council members were disturbed by such a vicious attack right in the heart of Coruscant, but when they suggested Singh had fallen to the dark side, Mundi insisted he did not believe it was so and that Singh fell somewhere between the light and dark sides. The council was approached by Anya Kuro, who wished to track down and kill Singh, but Mace Windu felt her past connection to the bounty hunter would cloud her judgment. Kuro sought support from Mundi, who said he had to support the council's decision, but volunteered to seek out Singh himself in Kuro's place. Het also volunteered, prompting concerns from Yoda that Het was simply seeking to avenge his father's death, but Mundi defended his Padawan and insisted Het would resist such temptations from the dark side. Adigalia also volunteered to accompany the 2 Jedi. Traveling in a consular-class cruiser, the 3 Jedi followed intelligence from Republic scouts and tracked Singh to the Camden system, where they engaged her cruiser in orbit around a jungle world. Mundi locked his proton torpedoes onto Singh's ship and sent her a transmission ordering her to surrender to Republic arrest or be destroyed. When Singh did not slow down, Mundi felt he had no choice but to destroy Singh's ship, and disregarded a warning from Gallia that she felt a disturbance in the Force. Singh, however, had ejected from her cruiser in a starfighter, which Mundi's sensors failed to pick up due to cover from a nearby asteroid belt, allowing Singh to get behind the Jedi craft and opened fire on them. Since Mundi had diverted all power to the front shields, Singh caused critical damage to the consular-class cruiser. Mundi, Asharad and Gallia fled to an escape pod and ejected seconds before Singh took another pass and destroyed the ship. Singh believed the Jedi dead and exited the system. The escape pod's comlink and thrusters were defective, so the Jedi were left to drift in space until its distress beacon was detected by a Mon Calamari ceremonial ship carrying Tikes, a Quarren senator from Dak. The ship took the pod aboard and rescued the Jedi. Tikes claimed to be on Galactic Senate business to inspect unclaimed investment properties, but the Jedi sensed he had his own agenda and that his plans were somehow connected to their quest to find Sing. Although Tikes offered to drop them off at the nearest outpost, Mundi insisted they remain with the senator until his work was complete, much to the Quarren's discomfort. The Mon Calamari vessel then ascended to the jungle planet, regularly bombarded by meteor showers. Upon landing, Mundi discovered traces of the mineral called runium, which is what Tikes actually traveled to the planet to mine. Mundi and the other Jedi sensed danger and remained on guard, although the Serian explained to Het that it could simply be a natural feeling from the planet itself. Shortly after venturing into the planet, several of Tikes' Quarren guards were killed by deliberately set traps and mines. The ensuing explosion caused Kuro, who had secretly established her own safe haven on the world, to reveal herself. The Quarren, believing her to have set the traps, opened fire and shoot Kuro through the shoulder, prompting a horrified Mundi and Het to run after her. As they approached, however, they were intercepted and attacked by Sing, who had traveled to the planet to kill both Kuro and Tikes. Het wished to pursue and attack Sing, but Mundi ordered him to stay focused on the mission and get Tikes and his men safely back aboard their ship. Mundi ordered Gallia to pursue Sing, as the Serian himself aided Kuro. After finding her alive, Mundi and Kuro raced to assist Gallia, who was wounded by one of Sing's mines, but still alive. As Mundi and Kuro tended to Gallia, Sing infiltrated Tikes' ship and killed all his Quarren guards before engaging Het in a lightsaber duel. Mundi and the other Jedi arrived back at the ship just as Het defeated Sing and rendered her unconscious. Although Mundi congratulated his Padawan on the victory, Het was disturbed because he had desired to kill Sing, and he feared he was still at risk of falling to the dark side despite all of Mundi's teachings. No longer feeling worthy of his Jedi training, Het asked to renounce his Padawan status and return to exile on Tatooine. However, Kuro asked to continue Het's training herself, explaining she had more experience in struggling with the dark side and could pass these skills on to Het. Mundi left the choice with Het, who felt he needed Kuro's instruction, and accepted. At that moment, the planet was bombarded by another meteor shower, which provided Sing the cover she needed to escape. Tikes, Mundi, and the rest of the Jedi departed the planet on the Mon Calamari ship and returned to Coruscant.